Welcome back to the channel. The painting gnomes were here and painted up our 2002 Chevy Silverado 1500, so let's throw it all back together. So we're going to throw this raggedy old thing on that used to be a hood liner. I know a lot of people are going to have a problem with that, but really this is all I have. So it's either this or nothing. And whether it's brand new or looks a little worn because it's 21 years old, they both look exactly the same when you close the hood. So that's what we're going with. It'll still function. It just doesn't look the best when the hood's open. Luckily, it's not a Ford, so the hood's not open quite as often. So after all our hood insulation clips are on there, we'll clip in our under hood light. Man, this truck is old. I was going to paint the bolts for the hood hinges, but I want to mess with everyone's OCD. Bolt in the ground and the wiring harness. And we'll go over to the door. Clip all of our little clips in there for the rods for the door lock actuator. We'll clip the rods into those and bolt our door lock in there. We can put our window channel in. It's also our window sweep on the inside. The newer style, it was two separate pieces. This one is one. We'll just use our belt molding installation tool to clip it in. We can put our door handle in. Drop it in there. And bolt it in. Put the rods in. And put our little cap on. And we can bolt our window channel in. And we're going to route our wiring harness in here. Feed it in the long way through the door. Hopefully I remember where it goes. It's been a while. When we get to the end, we'll just clip the boot in. Now we'll fish the wires through our cowl and clip the boot in on that side. And we'll plug all of our wires into the dash and route our harness. And then we can drop our window regulator in. And if you're very quiet, you can probably hear it breaking. This is actually a replacement one already because, believe it or not, the OEM one was broken. Once we got it in there, clip it into the door. If we can get it up there. It's got a couple little tabs that hang on there. Then you can start the bolts. We'll bolt it in. We can unplug our pigtail that we had in there so we could use the jumper pack to power the window. And we'll plug in our harness. Bolt in the back of the regulator, and now we can drop our door glass down in here. Try not to mess up the paint. Painting gnome hates when I do that. Get it all the way down in the door, we can rock it back. Flip it into our window channel. And slide it down into the regulator. We can put our belt molding in. It's got a tab in the back that we managed not to break, so we'll clip that in. And we'll clip it in over our pinch weld with the belt molding installation tool. We can put our window up. Drop our mirror in here. Yes, I know it's got a crack down the center of it, but I have a new glass I'll change later. But I didn't feel like going to Scott's GM Truck Emporium to pick it up. Bolt our mirror in, plug it in, and then we can bolt our window to our regulator. Now we can go over to the passenger side, put our door lock in here, bolt it in, drop our door handle in here. This one actually has a lock on the outside. This truck is so old. Even the newer versions of this same body style didn't have them. Snap it in there, bolt it in, put our plug in there, and connect all our rods. And now we can route our harness through. This one will go a little faster since I can remember how to do it. I just did it a couple minutes ago. Plug it all in. And now we can put our window channel in there. belt molding installation tool is doing a lot of work today. We can bolt our window channel in there. Get our little window track down at the bottom. Just one little bracket, kind of C-shaped. Drop our regulator in there. Go really quick, we can get in before it breaks. Bolt it in. And drop our door glass in. Rock it back into place. And set it down into the regulator. Now we can put the window up. Once the window's all the way up, we can bolt the regulator in. And put the window back down. Our battery's dying. Now we can put our belt molding in. Another one with a tab. Wow, this truck is rare. Clip it in with our belt molding installation tool. And now we're going to cavity wax the bottom seam of the door. Since our door is all the way apart. It isn't rusty yet. I didn't even bother taping up the drain holes. We'll just let it leak out of there. And no, it doesn't plug up the drain holes. If it does, you can always reach in there with a screwdriver. But those drain holes are pretty big. Put our wheel liner in. Now we can throw our padding down for our floor. We'll put our module in for the airbag. Bolt that in. Bolt in our ground wire. And plug in our module. Now we can put our sill plate bracket in there. And put this little plastic piece over it. And that's what holds the wiring harness in place so it doesn't get stuck where the tabs for the sill plate go. Do the same thing on the passenger side. Bolt it in. Now we're going to cavity wax our B-pillars. We have some seams down here, some welds on the inside, so we'll make sure we get a nice coating in there. And we'll throw our wheel liner in the driver's side. Man, that thing is filthy. Doesn't this guy clean anything? All the push pins in there. And we're going to throw the bumper on here. Temporarily. It needs to come back off so we can put the fog lights in it. So we're just going to put the 4 bolts in the center. And if you're wondering why the tires are flat, it's so that the painting gnome can reach the middle of the hood when he's painting. Now we're back to the interior. We're going to throw in our rubber floor, which truck should have. There is no need for carpeting in a truck, inside or outside, like such places as wheel liners. So Scott's GM Truck Emporium had a rubber floor left over from a truck they parted out, so I decided to put that in here. Since the old carpet was pretty nasty and it was tan, and well, it was supposed to be tan, it wasn't really tan anymore. So this is much easier to clean. Besides, if you put carpeting in here, you're just going to cover it up with rubber floor mats anyway. So we're just skipping a step. We'll bolt down our jack bracket. So this might look a little sketchy. At least that's what the Louisiana State Police said when they stopped me. I asked where my straps were, and they said they're right there. He said, that ain't going nowhere. That's what I said when I flicked the straps, so you could be sure of it. But in addition to that, all the straps we had here, there's some 2x2s that go from this stake pocket to this stake pocket. Kind of acts like a pin, keeps this thing from moving around, as if the straps weren't already doing enough. And then I put a couple straps on and said, well, what if one of them breaks? So I put a couple more on, and then I said, well, I got one more. And, well, we got 5 straps on this thing. Guess we'll get rid of our spider web. So I just tied down the cargo hooks that are mounted to the bed to the cargo hooks on the bed from the truck and kind of crisscrossed them. We loaded this with a forklift. It was not that difficult, although it was a little sketchy, being that it was about 8 feet in the air and the forklift had no brakes. But we got it up there. I just wanted to make sure it was going to stay up there because picking it up off the side of the road would have been a little bit difficult. And now for everyone who is concerned why it was taking me so long on this truck, well, it was because I was waiting for this bed. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again for the cheap seats. I am a rebuilder. I'm not a YouTuber. My money doesn't come from my YouTube videos, because if it did, I could just buy a brand new bed and throw it on here and you guys would pay for it. But unfortunately, I have to pay for it. Now, all the beds around me are about $500 to $600 for just a bedside. Probably not rusty now, but give it 6 months and they'll start popping through. I paid $300 for this entire bed, rust-free, in Louisiana. I only really wanted the bedside, but for $300 I couldn't pass it up. I bought that. I had to make it worth my while to go pick it up. So I waited until I had to go pick up another vehicle, and that's when I went and got it. So it took me a little while. So now that it's back here, we can strip it down for paint. We're going to pull off these wheel flares that apparently come free when you purchase a truck if you buy a truck south of, I don't know, about St. Louis, because it seems like every one of these has these stupid things. So we're going to take them off and toss them in the pile where they belong, because up here, those bolts just rot the fender walls out that much faster. We'll paint up all the holes and put some wax on the backside, so it'll be fun. We'll pull off our moldings. These aren't going back on. I don't think we're putting any moldings back on this truck, and if we do, it'll be the Sierra ones, because I like them better. Use our magic eraser to clean off the two-sided tape that's still left. There's a couple little dings all over the bed, but for a 20-year-old bed, you can't complain. It's rust-free, and that's what matters to me. So we'll let the bodywork gnome do his job, the painting gnome do his job, and when we have the bed back, we'll throw it on. So while our bed was off, I took the opportunity to coat all of our brake lines and fuel lines with a little bit of wax to keep them from rusting. I also wanted to use that opportunity to show you the fact that I didn't clean anything, because the clean freaks are really having a bad day today. Their name came up on the wheel of misfortune. I also want to show you the fact that there was no drive shaft in there, despite the experts telling me that I could not possibly drive this truck without a drive shaft because all the trans fluid would leak out. Clearly they were wrong, because I was in fact driving it. I mean, the Bluetooth option does keep the trans fluid from leaking out. I guess they don't know about that. So now that our bed is dent-free and freshly painted, we're going to drop it on here. We got a pad over the back of our cab so that we don't mess up the painter's handiwork, and Shadow Gnome is kind of guiding it into place. So we'll slowly drop it down. I didn't want to scratch the bed on the bumper, so we're going to throw some rags over that just to protect it. Get lined up. Shadow Gnome's learning. This is only the second bed he's ever put on, so needs a little practice. He'll get it here. We take off a lot of beds. So we just get it close. Now we can slide it around. Pull our rags out of the way so we can see how it fits on our bumper. And now we can bolt our bed down. This bed is going to have 7 bolts because they broke one off inside the bed. And I didn't know it until I was here. Had I known it was like that before, I would have drilled it out, but 7 bolts is more than enough. They used to only have 6 on a 6-foot bed. So I'll throw the taillight in there. And we're going to set our tailgate in here, even though it's the wrong color, because I want to make sure that our bed's in the right place. I don't want to paint the tailgate and try to close it and end up scratching the bed and the tailgate. We're just going to fit it, make sure everything is okay. Not scratching up any new paint. Now we'll throw our taillight in the other side. We'll do a little cleaning to give the clean freaks a break, but not too much of a break. Our taillight in there, and we can take our tailgate off. It's got a couple dings that need to be fixed, and the painting gnome has to paint it, so we'll let him do that. Meanwhile, we'll go back to putting our truck together. We got our passenger side mirror from Scott's GM Truck Emporium. So we're going to snap that in there and bolt it in. Put our foam in here. And we can put our gas door on. Bolt it in. We can bolt our bezel in for our filler neck. And slide our filler neck in here. And bolt that in. And we gotta go find a gas cap somewhere. We're gonna throw our speakers and our B-pillars. The original ones were blown out. So we got some cheapo flea market brand. It'll be just fine for this truck. Screw them in. Some self-tapping Phillips screws. Make this job nice and easy. And we can put our little foam piece in here. Line up our Christmas tree, snap it in there. And we'll put our speaker in the driver's side. Flip it in. And screw it in. The original ones had a plastic bracket that snapped in there. That's why there were no screw holes. Put our little foam piece in here. And we did end up having to replace the fabric on our headliner. The new headliner gnome did that for me. And the new headliner gnome needs a little practice. So we got a couple oopsies, but they're going to stay. It adds character. So now that we got our speakers in, we're going to put our B-pillar trim up. Line up all of our tabs. And clip it in with the belt molding installation tool. Make sure our screws are lined up in the back and screw them in. Do the same thing on the driver's side. We did put the little foam piece in the bottom, covers up the holes. We put wax in that side as well. It's not on video, so maybe I didn't. Screw that in. And now we can put our overhead console in. Plug in our lights. Tuck our wires up there. Flip the back end to the roof. And one screw up in the front. Click. Make sure our lights work. Now we can throw our mirror up here. The last guys installed our windshield. This one is fancy, it's got a compass in it. So we'll plug that in, screw it in, and put the little cap up there. We'll put our sun visor in on the passenger side. Tighten up our screws. And I'll have to go find the clip for our sun visor. I don't know where it went. Somewhere in the bottom of the big box where all the interior parts are. So we'll do the driver's side. This one I didn't manage to lose the clip. So now we can put our kick panel in on the passenger side. Snap it in, and then we'll snap in our sill plate. With our sill plate installation tool. And we're finding glass. Even though we had the entire interior out of this thing, we're still finding glass. We'll put our kick panel on the driver's side. This side we have to go around the hood release handle. Flip it in behind the handle and push it on. And we can put our sill plate in. Tuck in our carpeting. That doesn't want to stay there. And we can put our panel up over the back of the cab. It's got a couple alignment tabs on it. Line them up and smash it on there. Make sure you get it lined up because you don't want to take this off more than once. Already playing with fire, taking it off one time and not breaking any clips. And our treasure hunt was successful. I managed to find the clip for the sun visor in the bottom of our box. So we're going to screw that in there. I sure hope I could find one. I should have at least 2 extras. So I found one. I don't know if it's the one that belongs in here, but it's the one that's going in here. So it belongs in here now. So we'll screw that in. Open our sun visor. Now we can bolt in our dash kickstand now that we have our flooring in there. And then we'll put the cover over it. Just snaps on. There's a stud that lines it up, keeps it from twisting. Put that in there. And now we're ready to throw our seats in. Center console goes in first. Oh, look at that. I even cleaned the floor under the seats. We've been hard enough on the clean freaks. Drop the passenger seat in there. You bolt the rear bolts in first. The front ones have studs, so they'll stay lined up. We can tighten up the nuts on our studs. And tilt our seat back. Now we'll throw the driver's side in. Neither one of these seats is power, so it's pretty simple. Although there is a plug on the bottom of this one for the seat belt. The seat track didn't want to go where it belonged. Bolt the back of it in. Slide it back. Bolt the front in. And we can plug in our one wire underneath. Now we need to change our rear U-joint on our drive shaft because we don't have a cap for this side. We're way beyond expert level for finding these needle bearings because that cap is somewhere between here and Arkansas. And it's been gone for quite some time. Not to mention the U-joint's all rusted. So someone's been here before, so we're going to pop the C-clips off that hold it in. From the factory, there's injected plastic in the little holes that hold those caps on there. But I don't have that kind of machine and most people don't. So the replacements just use these little C-clips. So you just pop them out of there. The chisel to pry it the rest of the way out. And then we're going to use our ball joint press as a U-joint press. This is my snap-on ball joint press. They told me it was indestructible when I bought it. It was brand new. And I took them up on their challenge and managed to break it in less than a week. Luckily, they warranted it and told me that's the first one they've ever seen break. Well, I bought it when it first came out, so it was probably the first one they ever sold. And I was the first one to ever use it. So I broke it. I actually haven't broken one since, so maybe it was a defect. So we push the U-joint to one side, tap it back a little bit, get the other cap in there and spin this cap off. And it was pretty nasty inside. There's a grease fitting, but nobody ever uses them. And I'll push the other side of the U-joint out. Pull that cap off of there and slide our U-joint out of there. At least we're supposed to. There we go. In the pile. We got our brand new U-joint. So we'll slip it in there. We'll put the cap on one side. And then we'll put the cap on the other side. I like to tap the caps in there a little bit just to get them set so that they're straight. before we go and yeet them in there with the ball joint press. We got the supervisor making sure I'm doing it right, not ruining any new parts. I did work with a guy that used to do these U-joints with nothing more than a socket and a hammer. He'd hammer them out of there or hammer the new ones in. I was always worried about the bearings, but he never seemed to have a problem. Guess he was better than me. So when we got it in there, we'll slide our C-clip in. Let's flip it over. We'll push the other cap all the way in. You don't want to go too much. You will ruin the U-joint. Supervisor's making sure I don't do that. Slide the clip on this side. Make sure your U-joint's nice and free. Now we can put our grease fitting on there. Not sure why. Not like anyone's ever going to grease it, but we'll put it on there in case somebody decides to. We'll tighten it down with our non-ratcheting ratchet. That's what you get for buying Harbor Freight tools. Turns into a stick with a socket attachment at the end. Or a breaker bar, I guess. It's an 80-tooth breaker bar. So now I need to give a huge shout out to the Shadow Gnome. That slip yoke, I was going to replace it. It was pretty rusty from sitting in the bed. And he managed to clean it up. I gave him some sandpaper and he worked his way up from 400 to 2,000. And it's pretty clean. I only wish I had had him clean the splines up on the inside, because I found out they were a little rusty as well. Took me a little while to clean those up. So now that I have cleaned them up, it should slide right in. So we're going to put it into the back of the transfer case, which is why it was not leaking trans fluid. Because it's four-wheel drive, the drive shaft goes in the transfer case. Experts. So while I might have lost a little fluid out of the transfer case, I was going to lose none out of the trans. If I was using trans fluid with the drive shaft missing, I have more problems than just the missing drive shaft. And I did check the transfer case before I drove it, and the fluid was just a little bit low, but it was still okay. Zip them in there. Tighten them up evenly. There are a couple more C-clips that we did snap on there to keep this from shifting side to side. And I can't get the impact in there. Didn't feel like taking it out of park, so put it in my hand. And now we can finish tightening it up with a box wrench. Or a torque wrench. Click. Click. Always like to double check. Click. Click. Since we took the time to put the grease fitting in, we might as well grease it for the first and last time. Besides, all that grease can get thrown everywhere and make a mess and agitate the clean freaks. Since we had no drive shaft and our transfer case was open to the elements, I decided to use this opportunity to go ahead and change the fluid in our transfer case. So we'll drain it. And I did check it again, and we didn't lose any fluid on our little trip over to the shop from the storage yard. So we'll put our drain plug back in, and we'll pull the fill plug out. Also the check plug. And we'll fill it up with fluid. This is the blueberry flavor. It's the 4-button 4-wheel drive. Not the worst to fill. At least you can get the bottle in there. It doesn't require any special hose attachments or turning the truck upside down. So it only takes, I believe, 2 quarts. We'll fill this up. Put our fill plug back in there and tighten it up. I was instructed by the supervisor to clean a little of the dirt out of there, so this was all packed in those holes in the front of the frame, and the supervisor is admiring my work. So we'll pull our skid plate down up in the front here. More of a splash shield. It's made out of plastic. Not actually stopping anything. Probably not even water. And we'll pull our real skid plate down. This one's made out of aluminum. Now we can unbolt our idler arm and our pitman arm. Drop the center link down. We need to change all that stuff because, well, it's a 4-wheel drive Chevy truck, so of course it's worn out. Get our pickle fork in there and separate these two. Normally I don't like using the pickle fork, but we're not going to ruin anything. Parts are already bad anyway, so knock it off the other side. Mr. Spotty making sure I'm doing my job. He'll report back to the supervisor if I don't do anything right. So our idle arm was pretty loose. So was our pitman arm. I think they're original, and these things go bad after about 20,000 miles. Going to unbolt our idler arm and bracket. It's nut and bolted, and there's a washer on the back side as well, so those like to get lost. Unbolt the top one. Now we're going to put our new one together. The bracket comes separate from the idler arm. Not sure who's replacing these in pieces, but I always change them in assembly because chances are they're both worn out. So we'll bolt them together now. It's easier than doing it when it's in the truck. And this is a fancy one that has the remote grease fitting. So we'll put the little block in there and put it at just the right angle. And we'll put our little hose on there. And we'll be able to relocate it so it's easy to never grease again. We'll slip the idler arm assembly in there. Stuff our bolts through. And then go looking for those washers that we lost. And tighten it down. We unbolt the front bolt for the sway bar. And that's where we're going to route our hose. Our remote grease fitting. Put it around the bracket, bolt it back in. Now instead of trying to reach up there to get to that fitting, you only just have to go right inside the wheel well. Nice and easy. Still isn't getting greased. The hose just runs around. Instead of trying to get up there when that splash shield is in there. Now we got to change our pitman arm. We're going to drop our gearbox down. We're just going to unbolt it from the frame. We're going to leave our steering shaft and all of our lines connected. By doing this, it makes it a lot easier to get the nut off the bottom. So we can get straight at it with an impact instead of having to use a wrench. We spin the nut off. Then we're going to put our pitman arm puller in there. Just move it around until we get a straight shot at it. There's a little sleeve that you slide up into the gearbox. So you got to make sure you slide that up before you put your pitman arm puller in there or you tear it up. Press it off of there. If you don't have one of these, you can always cut a notch in there and hit it with a chisel and it'll crack and you can slide it right off. Takes a while. I do that if the pitman arm puller isn't big enough and I don't want to buy a new one. some of the bigger trucks, that's the way I do it. Takes a little longer, but it's cheaper than buying tools. We'll put our grease fitting on the top. A lot easier to do it now. And then we'll slide it up there. This pitman arm has 4 splines. Some only had 3. Never actually seen one with 3, but they're in the catalog. So you got to make sure you put it back on in the same position. Otherwise your steering is going to be off. Put the nut on the bottom. Carefully. It's real easy to cross thread these. And then we'll tighten it down. I believe the torque specs is about 8 ugga-duggas. Maybe a couple extra just for good measure. And now we can bolt our gearbox back up. Steering box, steering gear, whatever you call it. I know, the people from foreign lands, a gearbox is a transmission. But here it's also a steering box, I guess. Start the bolts. Make sure we don't cross thread them. Then we can run them home with the ugga-dugga gun. I believe these are a little bit less. They're only 4 ugga-duggas on the torque specs. We'll pull our little sleeve down over the splines. And we're ready to put our center link back up there. Get on the pitman arm first. The idler arm moves around a little more. Start the nuts. The replacements have castle nuts, so we'll have to put some cotter pins in there. Slide our cotter pin in, bend it over. And we'll slide the cotter pin in the other side. Bend that over. At least I'm going to try. I guess I got weak since the other side. And we'll smash the other side at a nice 90-degree angle. Make sure there's no way it's coming out. And while we're here, we're going to change the fluid in the front diff. And it looks like it was about past due. So when our diesel oil is done draining, we'll put our drain plug back in there. They make this job so easy. I don't know why people don't do it more often. Open up that plug. Click. Then we can remove our fill plug, which can be used as a drain plug if the truck is upside down. Their roles are reversed. But since it's on its wheels, hopefully for the rest of its life, it's our fill plug. And because it's just regular gear oil, we can actually use our gear oil wand and magically fill it up without struggle. Ah, the days when they all used this and this life was easy. These days there's like 1,000 different weights, synthetic and regular, and different flavors. So, put our fill plug back in there and tighten it down. That'll be the last time anyone ever does this. Now we can grease all of our front suspension for probably the last time as well, especially if it goes to Jiffy Lube. The ball joints on each side, inner and outer tie rod ends, our idler arm and pitman arm. And that's a lot of grease. Our U-joint in the front's never been replaced, so it's not greasable. Bolt our skid plate back to the bottom. And we have a nasty little dent in our front bumper here. So we're going to straighten it out a little bit. We have a porta power between the frame rail and the back of the bumper. And we're just going to push it out. That's why we temporarily bolted it on earlier. Just going to push it out a little bit, move it around, and keep pushing. You don't want to just push in one spot all the way out. It's kind of like PDR for bumpers. We're at least going for maybe 70 to 80% better than it was. We'll see if we get there. And that's what it looks like. I think we got at least our 70% better. Not worth changing the bumper. It's not rusted out, so any ones I find up here are going to be rusted out. I'll put our front skid plate up there from the land of make-believe. Bolt it up. Not too tight. Don't want to break the plastic. And we'll go ahead and change the oil while we're here. And it looks like it was overdue, just like the front diff. Adjust our oil filter wrench to the right size and see if we can get our oil filter out of here. It was done at Jiffy Lube, so struggle is imminent. Well, we've managed to put a hole in the oil filter, but it's still up there. And it likes it on there. And we're just going to see how big of a hole we can put in our oil filter. No going back now. So we've been forced to resort to the post Jiffy Lube oil filter removal tool, which is just our lady foot pry bar. Hammer it right through the center of the oil filter, and hopefully nothing else. Otherwise our leaky oil filter will be the least of our worries. So once it's through there, get a nice handle, and we'll just pull on that. Go as far as we can. Hopefully it's loose enough. Definitely has a bigger hole in it now. And we're able to break it loose with nothing more than our torque rag. Yeah, they do work in reverse too, so. Spin the oil filter off and let it drain. I'm not sure what's left to drain in it since I managed to poke some drain holes in it already. And there's our trophy. I win. A little cleaning, and we'll spin our new filter up there. No, I didn't put oil on the gasket. I put Loctite on there, and I'm going to send this to Jiffy Lube. See if they can get it off of there. Payback. Tighten it down with our torque rag. And put our oil plug back in there. And tighten it down to 6,000 foot-pounds. And we'll throw some oil back in here with our State Farm funnel. Not a sponsor. It's what I give for all those premiums I pay. A funnel. So as if Clean Freaks didn't struggle enough in this video, this thing is filthy now. So I think we better end the video here before we end up having to hospitalize these people. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take I got no love for the fake